Hello guys, I'm excited to bring you this tutorial today. In this episode, we are going to learn a few tips in 3D modeling and then learn how to use Redshift to texture, light and render inside of Cinema 4D. I just can't wait to get started. Let's jump in. Alright, so the first thing we are going to do is to grab the loft modifier. And what that does is it enables you to use splines that are in 2D to generate a 3D geometry. So as you can see, I'm duplicating splines, and as I duplicate them, it uses the 2D splines or whatever shapes they are and converts them into a 3D with a combination of them in space and rotation and size. So before we go ahead, I want us to import our references. And these are pictures I took. So for the front, I'm going to position it rightly and make sure that I have a good reference from the front. And I'll do the same for the right view. So I'll import them. Alright, so the next thing is to begin to adjust the positions of the splines. So I'm going to move it down here. Maybe zoom in a little. I'm going to position it well and then begin to change the size or the radius of the circles. Okay, just hit T on the keyboard, you get the scale tool to change the radius of the circle. Alright, so I'm going to make another duplicate. Alright, so I'm just going to make another duplicate, move it up a little, and then hit T, increase the radius a little. Alright, so I'm just doing it in that order to get the exact shape that I'm seeing on the reference. So I just keep making duplicates and then changing the size of the radius to fit what I'm seeing in the reference. Alright, so reduce the size of this one too as well. Yes, that'll be fine. I think I have to reduce this one too as well. Alright, so I'll make another duplicate, push it up, reduce the size just a touch. Okay, make another duplicate, move it up just to the top of the container and scale it to touch. Alright, so I'll move to the bottom and then grab the first circle, make a duplicate and place it on top of it and move it down, and then scale it down as well. So I'll scale it to have that curve on the side. So I'll bring it up a little and then make another duplicate again and place it on top. Okay, move it down and then scale it down also to get that curve on the sides, as you can see. Now I'll make the last duplicate and then move it up and scale it in so that I get that indentation at the bottom. Alright, so I think our model is ready to go. I just have to do a few touches with this. Alright, so we have the proportions at the front rightly done. Now we have to move to the side, that is the right side, and also trace it rightly on the right side. So I'll grab the first one and scale it down, move it up a little. So I'll just keep on doing that to make sure I have the right shape that I'm seeing in the reference. So the reference is the key. Make sure you always have a reference that you're looking at when it comes to modeling, you should always have a reference. That is rule number one. You should have a reference. Go to Google, just type in whatever you want to model. Just make sure you get references that are as close as possible. So I might just have to fast forward this to make sure that we don't spend too much time on this. So you just have to try your hands on it. Just keep practicing and make sure that you are able to use this loft tool to bring up something interesting. You can use it for glasses, anything that has a simple geometry that is not too complex, like a glass, like a bottle. You can use the loft tool to develop it. Now we have to continue with the cover and then the cap. So we are going to call this the base. Okay, we're going to make a duplicate of it and call this the cover. All right, now we open up the cover and we delete all the splines except the last spline that is closest to the cover. So we're going to leave that one and then begin duplicating the other splines for the cover from that point. All right, so you might just have to move it up a little, maybe 3 centimeters on the y-axis. All right, and we begin to make duplicates. So we have to move to the front view. Okay, but before that we have to work on the axis. So enable the axis, move it up, disable the axis, and then we can start work. All right, so let's make duplicates and then begin to follow the reference as we have been doing. Now at this point you realize that there's a curve at the top of the cover, and how I'm going to do that, I'm going to turn up into the vertices mode or the vectors mode. Select with the rectangular selection and lift it up just a little. Okay, so I'm going to lift it up to get that curve at the top. All right, that's okay. So I'm going to make a duplicate again and call this the cap. Then I'll also delete the splines, all of them except the one that is closest to the cap that I have in mind, which is this. So I'm also going to work on the axis for this one as well. All right, so once that is done, I can begin to duplicate the circles now. So I'll grab it, hit Control, drag, duplicate. Then I'll duplicate another one again, move it up, hit T on the keyboard, reduce it. Yeah, so I think we are almost done with our model. Make the last duplicate maybe, and then scale it down, way down. All right, so that's okay. So let's take a look at it in the perspective mode. Before that, let's just reduce the size of this a little. Okay, so that is how it's looking. Perhaps the last spline at the top, I can push those splines down. Hit E on the keyboard, push those splines down a little. I mean those points, actually those points on the circle. I have to make another duplicate, scale that one, bring it up and scale that one down, and also move the points of that spline down. All right, draw back into the normal mode and then push it down till we don't see those edges again. All right, so our model is ready to go, but lastly I want us to create those bevels or those caps those bevels at the edges. You can do that by creating duplicate of the spline just close to it and reducing it just a little, just to create that bevel at the edge. That makes it look nice. So that's the duplicate of the last spline. Alright, we'll do the same for the base as well. The last spline, we duplicate it and then we scale it down, but move it up a little. Just move it up a little. Scale it down. Alright, so that's it. Our model is ready. One thing we can work on is the mesh distribution as well. So let's go to display and turn the display to garage shading with lines. Okay, so looking at the base, I don't really like the distribution. I'll just disable subdivision per segment. Okay, and change the mesh subdivision to 60 by 60. That is 60 on U and then 60 on V to get that regular grid distribution on the surface. I'll do the same for the cover as well. I'll turn out the subdivision per segment. I make it 40 by 40. No, that's too much. Make it 40 by 20. And then also for the cap, 40 by 20. But I'll turn out the subdivision per segment as well. Okay, looking at this, I feel like the distribution has to be consistent. So if I should make all of them 60-60, it will be preferable. So for the U axis, if all of them are 60, it's fine. It's very appropriate. All right. So that's it. All right. Next, we are going to drop a plane in the scene. Change it to 1000 by 1000. Just make it very big because this is going to be our backdrop. Okay, then we drop the bend deformer and make it a child of the plane. When you make it a child of the plane, it affects the plane. Okay, so I'm going to turn up the strength and then go to coordinate, change the bend to -90. Sorry. Then I'll adjust the size a little just to make sure that the curve is on point. Okay, I'll have to rotate the bend actually on the x-axis. Alright, just to change the direction of the bend. Then I'll scale up the plane again. So you see we are having 2000 by 2000 thereabout. We want to have a very big size, so we can begin to scale up. Okay. Now I have to increase the segments of the plane, the width segment and the height segments as well. I'm going to increase the segments. Alright, so I'm going to have the position rightly placed. That's the view I'm going to use for the camera. Alright, so I'll drop my camera. Alright, go to Redshift camera. The next thing is to bring our dome light. So I'll go to light, then dome light. Okay. Then I want to quickly preview the render for us to see how it's looking. For now, there's no texturing, there's no proper lighting. It's just a dome light that has been dropped. So I'll just create the material for the backdrop and then also the texture of the model. Okay, so we'll call this one the backdrop. So we'll create another one for the model. Okay. So just click and drag it on the model, then it applies, as you can see. All right, so what I did also was to use Photoshop to create the label. If you should look at the reference, I mimicked the label in the reference, so I had to use Photoshop to recreate it for the 3D texturing. Okay, so if I should open the splash back and the splash front, you would see how it looks inside of Photoshop. Okay, so this is the front, and then this is the back as well. Okay, so I created all of this in Photoshop. All right, so just make sure you always have a label that you're working. If you're working for a client, or if you're doing a special project, make sure you have the original label. Okay, so we are just going to go ahead and light up the scene. All right, I'm going to use the HDRI link, which enables you to connect a library of HDRI maps, okay, and preview them with a browser. Okay, so there's a directory for the HDRI maps. You can, all right, so you can select any of them, okay. But if you don't have the HDRI link, you don't have to worry. You can just load it up from the path, the default path. Just download any HDRI, and then we can go ahead. All right, so I'm going to choose one from my library. Okay, so I'll choose this one, the Metal 008. Okay, so you can see it update. Or probably I have to choose the 007 instead, and that makes it better. Okay, so I realized that I have to increase the segment, the width, and then the height segments of the plane. So I'll just turn them up a little to see if it affects the quality of the backdrops preview. Okay, all right, so we are going to go ahead with the texturing. I'm just going to change the color of the diffuse to something white. All right, that is for the backdrop. That's okay. I'll reduce the reflection to 0.3 there, about. Turn up the roughness, then also make sure the IOR is around, say, 1.3 there, about. It looks harsh, so I have to reduce the diffuse weight to about that point, and turn up the roughness as well. Maybe I have to turn back up the weight. Okay, so there about is fine. Okay, for the backdrop. All right, so the next thing we are going to do is to convert the pieces of models that we've made with the Loft tool. We are going to convert them and make them editable. All right, so we are going to collapse it, select the Loft with all the splines, and hit C. I think we should select all of them and right click and go to connect object plus delete, and do the same for the others as well. All right, so if you're familiar with Photoshop, you understand that you can have the luxury of saving selections. The same with 3D, we are going to also save selections. Okay, so with the rectangular tool, I'm going to go into the polygon mode and select halfway of the whole model. Like, I'm going to select half of the side and then save it as a selection, so that we are going to apply the texture on that side, that is the front label, and then the inverse as well, that which is the back, will also take the back label. What I want to do is actually to reverse the normals now. Okay, so I'm going to hit U and hit R. That reverse the normals. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to maybe the top view, and then use the rectangular selection to select halfway. All right, orange triangular tags attached. Call this front and I'll call this back. So they are attached to the base. All right, and they are going to tell how far textures will wrap on the model. So I'm going to select set selection for the front. Then I'll hit U, I. Then it inverts the selection. Choose the back. Go back to select and set selection, and that will be the tag for the back. Okay, so I have selections for both the front and the back, and I'm going to show you how I'll apply them to the materials. So what that means is that I'm going to create two materials actually. All right, so let's begin with the material texturing for the model. Alright, so we go to Redshift material. I'm going to do a few things here. I'm going to turn up the refraction to about 0.6, and then change the color to a bluish color there about. Okay, I'm going to turn up the samples to 128. Yes, and then the roughness to about 0.5. That's fine. Alright, so let me quickly preview the render and see how it's looking. Alright, so it's looking good. And so for the diffuse color, I'm going to turn it down to 0. Alright, it's looking good. Maybe I'll just have to change it to a dark blue, not entirely black, dark blue. That's okay. Alright, and I'll increase the samples of the reflection to 128. Always make sure your samples are high enough. That guarantees a very quality render. And also my IOR, I have to turn it up to like 1.7. Alright, so we can see this is looking good. We'll just make a duplicate, not that. Alright, now we are going to load our texture into the material. Alright, so the Redshift shader graph is a very simple and easy to use workflow. Alright, so if I should just increase the size for us to see, it basically has an output, and the output is what is previewed in the render. The output has to be fed with all your texturing that you have developed. Okay, so I'm going to load in my texture. I'm going to go to splash front, click no. Alright, so I load up the texture. Alright, then I'm going to bring in the material blender. Alright, because I'm going to blend the Redshift material that I've created with the texture, so that the texture is a label blended over the actual material. So the actual material is going to serve as our base material. Now the Redshift material blender helps us with this form of blending. Okay, so I am going to now pick whip the Redshift material and connect it to the base material. Okay, so what that means is that the Redshift material has now become the base material for the material render. Now we can't see anything being rendered here because there's nothing feeding the output. Okay, so the output doesn't have any feed yet. That is why we don't see anything at the moment. Okay, now we are also going to connect the texture to the layer 1's color. All right, what just happened is that the two materials or the textures have been blended together with the material blender. So we go for the color splitter, and what that helps us to achieve is also generate an alpha channel for the texture so that the label can have some transparency around it. It's like it helps us cut the label and place it on the material. So that is what the color splitter does. So I'll just click, drag a whip to the input of the color splitter, and also drag the whip from the output of the color splitter, and use it as the blend color. All right, so this is a simple setup. Then finally, we'll just drag all of them to the output, and you can see, if I should open the renderer, you can see that it's previewing well. However, there's a problem because the wrapping is not well done. So I'll go to the texture tag, right click, fit to object. Okay, nothing happens. That is because the projection has to be set to flat, and when you set it to flat, you can see that the rendering, you can see that the texturing is now well wrapped around the object. Okay, but there's a problem because it's wrapping on both sides. That is why we created the texture tag to limit the texture so that it's applied only to one side of it. So I created two different selections, that is the front and then the back. So we'll just click and drag it to the front. Okay, a selection, so you can see it only applies at the front. Then we make a duplicate for the back. Okay, so we are going to just call this front, and then we call this back. All right, so I'll open up the back, and then I'll just change the texture to actually the back texture of the Photoshop file. Alright, so I'll also have to click and drag it on the base material, on the base model, and then I'll make sure that selection tag is applied to the back as well, so that it only affects the back. Alright, so I'll just click and drag. Now I'll change the projection to flat, then I'll right click, and then I'll fit to object. Then you can see that it only applies at the back and is well fit. Alright, so that is basically the texturing for the base model. Alright, so I'll go to Redshift again and texture the cover. I'm just going to make it very simple. I'm just going to choose a white color. Something close to white. Turn up the roughness to about 0.4. Make sure the samples are high enough. Okay. Maybe I have to also have some coating on it. Okay. Also make sure the samples are also high enough for the coating. All right, so we'll just call this the cover, and then a duplicate of it, I'll call it the cap. Okay, I'll change the cap's color to something bluish there, about a dark blue. All right, navy blue. All right, also make sure the roughness will be a lot more than 0.4, make it 0.7. all right, okay, so we'll just apply them on the corresponding objects, the cover and then the cap as well. All right, so you can see that everything is actually looking good now. All right, so maybe I'll change the camera's focal length to about 80. This is actually a good focal length to use for such products. All right, so this is just about it. I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. Once again, I want to apologize for my pointer that you are not seeing. I'm going to start a training series very soon, basic tutorial series for Cinema 4D. Okay, so I just want you to stay tuned. Please leave comments below. If you have any questions, just leave it in the comments section. I'll just respond. And then also subscribe. If you like what I'm posting, just subscribe, like it, and then also share it. All right, so thank you for watching this tutorial. I would see you next time.